top 5 quarterbacks heading into 2024 in the ACC. The new look ACC has 17 teams, Garrett, and one of the newcomers has the number 1 quarterback in the entire conference. I'm talking about Preston Stone from SMU. Yes, he is the number 1 quarterback in the ACC. And if you didn't get a chance to watch him last year because he was playing in the American, number 1, shame on you because you missed an absolute show that he and that offense put on in Dallas. Number 2, you're going to become quite acquainted with his skill set very quickly in this conference. He's a guy who waited his turn behind a lot of really talented guys. Tanner Mordecai was ahead of him when he first got to Dallas. He waited his turn. He didn't transfer, and he finally got the chance to break out in 2023. He didn't get to play in the ACC championship or the AAC championship, excuse me, because of an injury that he suffered. He broke his left fibula, but all accounts say he's going to be ready to go. It was a clean break, so he's going to be ready to go for the season this year in the ACC. And man, did he put on performance last year. 3,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. He was 14th in the country with a 161.3 passer rating. Can that translate to a power conference, and can he have those same numbers or at least have that same success against more talented defenses? That's really the only question that I have for him at this point.
It depends on what you mean by more talented defenses, because you may not find some of those in the ACC. There's better teams in the ACC than there are in the American. That's not what we're debating. Obviously, that's not what we're debating. But top to bottom, there's not that many like fantastic teams in the ACC, and I think SMU with Preston Stone at the helm is dangerous offensively. They can really score quick, and the big thing that's going to help Preston Stone is he's got some real weapons. He's got lots of talented players around him at SMU, and they've got a very, very talented offense. Now, what happens on their defense? Can they stop anybody? We'll see. But you know, the offense, and I'm going to shout out another guy real quick. Little RJ Maryland shout out for him coming in, junior tight end. He's scored 7 touchdowns last year as a sophomore. That's a good tight end and a dangerous weapon in the red zone. So I think that when you're looking at, you know, what is available to Preston Stone in terms of weapons, that's going to help him kind of accelerate this transition into the ACC. And frankly, I mean, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the ACC. And I was surprised looking at the list at just how good the ACC was. There were a couple of guys I'd forgotten about, but man, I just think when you look at this, Preston Stone has the highest ceiling, all the talent in the world. And I think that he's going to put on a show and put a lot of people, you know, on notice as he maybe upsets a couple of teams en route to, you know, maybe SMU finishing top half of the conference here in their first year in the ACC.
Ooh, they've got a fun home schedule. I'll tell you much. BYU, TCU, FSU all coming to Gerald Ford Stadium. I'm pumped to be a season ticket holder for.
They're going to win 2 of those.
They're going to win several of those, I think. And maybe Florida State, all they can handle. I'll tell you that right now.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be really, really fun to see what they can do year one. Garrett, you're absolutely right that the talent level at the quarterback position has taken quite an uptick, and it's largely because of these next 3 guys that are all transfers in this year. Yep. I'm old enough to remember this time last year when we struggled to find a top 5 for the ACC.
That was pretty tough. I don't ever want to go through that list of people again. That was rough.
The justifications for some of the guys we put on the 2023 list were reaching at best, but we don't have to do that.
Schrader, because why not?
That's right. Yeah, I think that was basically our justification for having Garrett Schrader at number 5 is because who else? And he's a little bit more experienced. But number 2, we hyped him up in the last segment. Kyle McCord at Syracuse just couldn't get over the Michigan hump at Ohio State. But you can't argue with the overall record, right? Like he was 11-1 as a starter in his only year as a starter at Ohio State. 3,170 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I get it, though. Like, I get it. If you're an Ohio State fan, you wanted more than that with the weapons that he had to work with. I totally get it. We broke that down last segment. But if you get those numbers at Syracuse, you are doing cartwheels and dancing in the streets up in upstate New York. So Syracuse has an interesting schedule. The talent level and having a first-year head coach is going to be a lot of wild cards. Don't think they're going to have the more talented team, but they got a really good draw in the schedule. Kyle McCord, there's not going to be a lot of defenses that he's scared of, just like we talked about with Preston Stone. So my question is, what's his ceiling at Syracuse? Is he all conference? Is he getting some dark horse Heisman recognition if they win not 8 or 9 games? Like, what is the true ceiling for Kyle McCord at Syracuse?
I think if he's Heisman convo, you have to probably have Syracuse at 10 wins. And I know that that's kind of an optimistic
I
view,
forgot.
and
Sorry,
obviously,
that was my NCAA 25 file that I
okay,
made.
yeah, okay, just making sure.
Right.
Yeah, no, but I mean, really, like McCord is very talented, and we've just kind of had some questions about why is Ohio State not okay with just fine, and well, Syracuse is fine with just fine. And in fact, we might be able to put the question, back out there. The whole is Syracuse good? Then that might become a question again with Kyle McCord at the helm, and it'll be a lot of variables. I think it's interesting to see what they're going to end up looking like with this new coaching staff, with all the transfers. Like, it's going to be an interesting team to watch and just kind of see what they can do and how they hold up against some of these other ACC teams. I think that they'll find their way out of the middle of the pack towards the top of the conference. Now, there's probably more teams that'll end up at the top of the conference than there were last year in terms of just quality teams being really good, but they'll find their way out of that middle of the pack and that whole, I mean, it's what, 17 teams now. You're going to get probably 6, 7, 8 of them that are in that fighting for bowl eligibility thing. I think you can say that Syracuse is pretty safely a bowl team with McCord at the helm, and I don't think that's necessarily controversial. He's a very good quarterback. He's smart with the football, and he's maybe not as dynamic as you want, but you don't need to be all that dynamic again in the ACC, where there's some pretty bad teams that you're going to end up going against. That as long as you can take care of the football, put the ball in the end zone a couple times, you'll end up winning those games.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think if he wins 8 games, they're going to build him a statue in Syracuse, right? Like, talk about a complete 180 of fan expectations, just the pressure being lifted off of his shoulders. I don't think
Yeah.
enough can be said about that factor for this season, and I
Hmm.
think he's gonna have a lot more fun just
Right.
playing football at Syracuse versus all the pressure that was involved being the starting quarterback at Ohio State.
Well, and you're spot on there. There's not going to be a game where he blinks this year, right? There's not going to be a game where the moment gets too big for him. I don't think all year, because I mean, find me a game that's harder to play in than the game, right? There's not a game where that's going to be tougher. He played it in front of Michigan's fan. Like, this is tough to do, is go on the road and face up at the big house. It's not an easy place to play. So I can't remember who they have on the schedule off the top of my head, but even take, like, if they play Clemson or Florida State, those are great fan bases and great crowds. It's not better than the big house, right? It's maybe the same or maybe level, but it's not bigger than the big house. It just can't be bigger than the big house. And so there's not going to be a spot where he really blinks and gets intimidated by the environment. And that kind of cool, calm, collected could pay dividends in this season for Syracuse, as he kind of keeps his cool, keeps his composure, and hopefully keeps Syracuse in some of these games.
Yeah, road games for Syracuse this year: UNLV, NC State, Pitt, Boston College, and Cal are the only road trips this year. So
Not tough on the road.
I mean, NC State's a tricky place to play. Absolutely,
They'll be good, yeah.
you're talking, a trip out to the West Coast that could be a weird body clock game, but other than that, the road trips are
Nothing,
really
nothing bigger than the big house, though.
yeah, super manageable road trips for the Orange this year.
Hmm.
I'm really excited to see what they can do with that schedule and with Kyle McCord running the show there. Another transfer that I cannot wait to see in a power conference. My guy, man. I've been trying to, just spread the word, spread the truth of the Grayson McCall gospel for 3 years, it feels like now. And finally, I get to see my boy in a power conference. 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year. He had his season cut short by injury last year. He also lost Jamie Chadwell, and that was just a huge detriment to everything at Coastal Carolina last year. But my man Grayson has 106 career touchdowns, passing and rushing, and his career passer rating, Garrett, is 178.4. Is that good?
Hmm. That's pretty good. It ain't bad. I'll tell you that much. It ain't bad.
So I made the claim last week, and Mitch kind of shook his head at me when I said it. That Grayson McCall will be the best quarterback that Dave Doran has had in his tenure at NC State. I know what I'm saying when I say that. I know the storied history and the really solid run of quarterback play that he's had there. I stand by that statement. I think that you pair Grayson McCall, get him healthy, pair him with a good offensive line, a good run game, and a defense for the first time in his entire career, you could be talking about a 9 or 10 win NC State that's fighting for a spot in the ACC championship game.
Yeah, and the breakdown here that I want to go into, I was looking at him ahead of time because I was like, do you maybe have him a little overrated? I don't think so, because
Oh,
if you look at his completion percentage, that's really what I want to key in on. Starting in 2020 as a freshman, he completed 68% and then 73% and then 69%, nice, and then 67%. And that 67% was in the year after Chadwell left, right? And so he's doing this not maybe in the system that's ideal. And I know that he's stuck around and he's given everything he can to Coastal Carolina. That program should have no ill words for him at
they
all,
should build a
even though he
statue.
went to go play for NC State. Yeah, he's an all-timer at Coastal Carolina. But if you look at those numbers, you're looking at the completion percentages, that's already impressive. The yards per attempt, the air yards per attempt, all looking at over 10 the entire way for those seasons. And he only threw, quick math, 8 picks in the 3 years where he was really there with Chadwell. Only threw 8 picks. He added 6 last year, but that's still 14 picks over a 4-year career. It's pretty dang good. There's a lot of quarterbacks that'll do that in a season. And if you're looking at NC State and you're trying to figure out, hey, what do we need? They've had a solid defense for as long as I can remember. They play good defense. They played really good defense last year. They couldn't do anything on offense. They were kind of abysmal. You put a quarterback back there who can complete passes, keep his head, and just get the ball out and keep your offense moving. You don't need to be all world. You don't need to be electric and putting up 40, 50 points a game at NC State. And if he can be good, NC State could be talking about a possible ACC championship game and a playoff berth and all of that if they play their cards right with Grayson McCall.
So some of the quarterbacks, Robert Anae is the offensive coordinator at NC State, and some of the quarterbacks that he has coached to success at the college level include Brennan Armstrong at Virginia. Very comparable skill set to Grayson McCall. Very exciting player when he and Robert and I were teamed up.
Yeah,
Garrett
for sure.
Schrader in his year that made us rank him in the top 5, 2022, the year before last year. And a guy named Taysom Hill, Garrett,
I know that guy.
BYU. So
He
I
was all right.
mean, he was the offensive coordinator for all three of those guys, made them into bona fide stars at the collegiate level. And I think Grayson McCall is going to be no different. As long as he can stay healthy, he's going to lead the
Yeah.
Wolfpack to a lot of success this year. Another transfer that's trying to resurrect a program and honestly save a coach that's on life support at this point. Cam Ward at Miami. And this is where we cut off at 4 for the Big Ten. And I almost cut off at 4 for the ACC as well, but I think Cam Ward warrants a slight tier above the guys that we'll debate for number 5 just because of
Mhm.
the success that he's had in his career. He ran the air raid at Wazoo and Incarnate Word down here in Texas early on in his career. This is his 5th year of college football. I I really like Cam Ward. He's
Yeah.
efficient. He didn't turn the ball over a lot. He did a lot of what he was asked to do. And I think I'm a little biased against him because Mitch and I wanted so much more out of him when he went from Incarnate Word to Washington State. We told the college football world, hey, watch out for this guy. He tore it up down in San Antonio. He's going to tear it up in Pullman. And he did well, but he just didn't put up the gaudy numbers or lead Washington State to anything, more success than they had without him. So Mitch and I wanted more, but he is going to have a lot more talent around him at Miami, and that could lead to more success very easily.
Yeah, and I think that it will lead to more success. The big question is just, yeah, what's the ceiling there for Miami? Because they're going to be playing pretty desperate, and it all starts week 1. And We've talked about that game with Florida several times in this podcast. Go back and find our takes. Don't look too hard. But it's, it's a it's a big spot for him that he can make a statement on and then get that momentum, right? If he gets the momentum, he wins that first game against Florida, and then it's off to the races. It's a pretty easy schedule on the first part, if I remember correct, and he should be able to get some momentum as he gets into the harder part of his conference play. And if he gets that, it could be a big year for Miami, and it could save the staff and save what's going on there. Um, He's plenty efficient. I'm curious to see what he can do if he has to hold on to the ball a little bit more, make some more advanced reads. Because, like you were saying, he was running air raid, and that's fine. Air raid's not a bad system. It's not what he's going to be doing at Miami, right? A lot more of that kind of power O, a lot more smashing, a lot more, the power spread more, where it's going to be, you know, trying to hit the guys on the outside, trying to get the ball to your playmakers in space. Can he make those reads? Can he make those quick decisions that he needs to? And can he do what he needs to do to ultimately just win games at Miami? I don't think at this point Miami cares about the way that they win games. I think they just want to get back to winning some games and not being the butt of people's jokes now, and talking about kneel downs and everything else. They're so sick of that down there at Miami. They got to be. So, yeah, I think Cam Ward's a good quarterback, and I think he's definitely a step above the rest of the people below him on this list. He may prove us wrong. Like, he could prove us wrong very quickly, but I think he has the talent to get the job done at Miami and take them and get, another year for that staff down there.
Well, if you're a fan of some power programs in the ACC, you might be punching air right now because we haven't talked about your guy. And I think rightfully so. So in our next, our under consideration for our last spot here, we have three guys. Two of them are, all three are veterans, but three very different story arcs for these guys' careers. All three were very heralded recruits. One is on his third school. One is on his first school still, but is definitely not living up to the hype that he got as a 5-star recruit. And the other one is a guy that I think could be poised for a breakout year this year and had a very nice season debuting as the starter for his team last year. So, three guys for you to consider, Garrett. Cade Klubnik at Clemson, DJ Uyangale transferring back to the ACC to go to Florida State from his 1-year stint out in Oregon State, and Kyron Drones of Virginia Tech. We have three guys. We have one spot. No disrespect to the Haynes Kings and Malik Murphys and the, lots of other very interesting guys. Thomas Castellanos at BC, Fernando Mendoza at Cal. Very interesting players. But I think it's three guys for one spot for me, and I'm wondering where you're leaning out of those three.
I think you're definitely right about that. For me right now, I'm probably going to lean towards Cade Klubnik, and I think I just want to believe in him. I've seen him succeed. And by the way, something interesting about this, a lot of Texas ties on this list. You look at Cade Klubnik, you look at Kyron Drones transferring out, obviously, Malik Murphy transferring from Texas, Haynes King, Max Johnson, both transferring out of Texas A&M. So there's a lot of Texas ties on this list. I might have forgotten. Oh,
Cam
Tyler
Ward.
Shuck, too.
Yeah,
Shuck
Tyler
was at Texas Tech. So there's a lot of Texas ties on this list, which is kind of funny. But no, I think Cade Klubnik, I'm rooting for the kid. I want him to succeed so bad. We watched him in high school. We watched him in the state championship game live with our own eyes. He's a good quarterback. He just hasn't been able to put it together at Clemson, and I can't figure out why. There's no reason why he shouldn't be putting it together. I don't know if it's a mental thing for him. I don't know if the game's too fast. I don't know if it's I got to figure that part out. But Cade Klubnik has the skill set and the talent, I think the top end talent to be there for number 5. And for any of the Florida State people who are going to come at me about DJU, I want to reference you to a couple years ago and ask you what you were talking about DJU back when he was playing at Clemson, and see if you had any nice words for him back then, or if everyone was calling him overrated and bad and trash and everything else. So funny how a couple years can turn the tides. That's the modern state of college football, I suppose. But no, I think Cade Klubnik is probably the most talented guy left on this list, and he should turn the corner. And if Clemson can be anything close to competitive everywhere else on the field, Cade Klubnik has no excuse to not succeed this year. Can he? That's a big if. We'll see what happens. But Cade Klubnik should be number 5 on this list.
He absolutely should. I totally agree with you, but
Hmm.
maybe year 2 in Lincoln Riley or, not Lincoln Riley, Garrett Riley's
Different
offense
Riley, yeah.
will be better for him. Like I said with,
Hmm.
I can't remember who I gave that excuse for in the Big Ten, but, the year 1 to year 2 jump in an offense, Drew Allers, who I did that for.
Yeah, Drew Aller, yeah,
The year 1 to year 2 jump in an offense is definitely something to monitor, and I think that he could be better, with another year under his belt in that system. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. Cade Klubnik should be a
yeah.
top 5 quarterback in the ACC. That is not asking too much of him. And Clemson needs him to do that to be successful and to reach the goals that they want to do. I just want to shout out my guy Kyron Drones for a little bit.
Yeah.
Potential breakout candidate. He had a really solid season as the starter for Virginia Tech last year. Didn't put up gaudy numbers in the passing game, a little over 2,000 yards. Took care of the football, though. 17 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. And he was a real threat to run the ball as well. 818 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. So, true dual threat quarterback. It brings a dynamic that we didn't talk about really with any of the other than Grayson McCall on the rest of this list. So, he's a very interesting character as well. But I'm going to go with Cade Klubnik. I will agree with you there and say that he just should be top 5.
Mhm.
Gracious him. How about that?